There are moments in global geopolitics when a single infrastructure project quietly alters the balance of power. No military buildup, no sanctions, no breaking headlines about armed conflict, just miles of electrified steel tracks stretching across a continent. In July 2026, Tanzanian President Samia Suluhu Hassan stood in the western city of Kigoma to lay the foundation stone for a single infrastructure contract worth over $2.7 billion. Constructed by a state-backed Chinese joint venture, CCECC and CRCC, it extends Tanzania's high-speed standard gauge railway. On paper, it looks like a routine domestic transport upgrade. But the biggest question isn't why China is building a railway in Tanzania. The real question is this: what happens when one railway suddenly becomes the ultimate gateway for some of the most critical resources on Earth? Because the true battle for the future isn't being fought with warships or air bases. It's being fought with supply chains, ports, and steel rails. And Beijing just placed a massive bet on Africa's eastern coast. To understand what is happening here, you first have to understand the nightmare of moving freight across Central Africa. For decades, a truck carrying minerals from the Democratic Republic of the Congo faced a brutal, unforgiving journey. Washed-out dirt roads, weeks of border delays, political instability, and thousands of kilometers of uncertainty. The problem in Central Africa was never finding the minerals. It was getting them out to the ocean. And those minerals are the foundation of our modern world. The Congo Basin and its surrounding highlands hold some of the world's most valuable reserves of copper, cobalt, lithium, and nickel. These are not ordinary commodities. They are the materials powering electric vehicles, battery technology, renewable energy systems, and modern defense industries. Chinese companies already own or operate a massive share of mining assets in the Democratic Republic of Congo. But owning a mine in landlocked Africa creates a major vulnerability, because resources are only valuable if they can reach global markets. This is where the $2.7 billion Tabora to Kigoma railway line comes in. By extending electrified standard gauge rail directly toward Lake Tanganyika, cargo from Burundi and eastern DRC can connect into Tanzania's transport network and move toward the Port of Dar es Salaam. Instead of relying entirely on slow and unpredictable road networks, critical minerals gain a more efficient route toward the coast. A geographic bottleneck becomes a potential trade corridor. And that changes the entire equation. But this isn't just about moving rocks. It's about who controls the trade flows of an entire continent. For decades, Kenya was the undisputed logistics leader of East Africa. Its northern corridor, centered around the port of Mombasa, became the main gateway for landlocked economies including Uganda, Rwanda, South Sudan, and parts of eastern DRC. Kenya invested heavily in infrastructure, including its own standard gauge railway. But the project faced challenges, including the difficulty of extending the network beyond Kenya's borders, leaving much regional cargo dependent on trucks. Tanzania watched, and Tanzania built a different strategy. The country is developing a central corridor designed to connect its Indian Ocean coastline with inland regions and neighboring countries. By expanding electrified rail infrastructure, improving freight capacity, and linking directly with inland transport routes, Tanzania is now challenging Kenya's long-standing dominance over East Africa's trade networks. But the biggest impact may not happen in Tanzania itself. It could happen hundreds of kilometers away, inside countries that do not even have a coastline. Landlocked nations, such as Zambia, Burundi, Rwanda, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, now have more options for reaching global markets. And when countries have multiple trade routes, the balance of economic power begins to shift. Every ship redirected toward Dar es Salaam represents more than cargo. It represents customs revenue, logistics jobs, industrial investment, and long-term geopolitical influence. But here is what makes China's strategy in Tanzania truly fascinating. Beijing is not starting from zero. It is rebuilding a strategy it first created almost 50 years ago. Back in the 1970s, long before China became the economic powerhouse it is today, Beijing financed and built the historic TAZARA Railway. The 1,860-kilometer railway connected Zambia's Copperbelt mining region directly to Tanzania's coastline. At the time, the project was about more than economics. It was also about geopolitics. The railway provided Zambia with an alternative route to the sea during an era when regional political tensions made traditional trade routes more difficult. But over the decades, TAZARA suffered from declining investment, aging infrastructure, and operational challenges. Now China is pursuing a dual-track strategy in Tanzania. The first track is the future, a modern, electrified standard-gauge railway network expanding toward Burundi, Rwanda, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. The second track is the past, a renewed TAZARA Corridor connecting Zambia's mineral heartland back to the Indian Ocean. When these two networks are viewed together, a larger picture begins to emerge. China is not simply building individual railway projects. It is helping create a connected transport system linking some of Africa's most resource-rich regions to a major Indian Ocean port. The question is no longer just where minerals are located. The question is who controls the routes that move them. And the rest of the world is paying attention. Washington and European capitals have recognized the strategic importance of Africa's mineral supply chains. In response to China's growing infrastructure presence, the United States and European partners have supported competing projects such as the Lobito Corridor. Unlike Tanzania's eastward route toward the Indian Ocean, the Lobito Corridor aims to move Central Africa's mineral wealth westward through Angola toward the Atlantic Ocean. This has created a new kind of geopolitical competition, a contest not over territory, but over direction. The West wants critical minerals flowing toward Atlantic markets. China is building infrastructure designed to connect those same resources toward Asian supply chains. At the same time, critics warn that large-scale infrastructure projects come with serious financial risks. Questions remain about debt sustainability, long-term economic returns, and whether developing countries can maintain full control over strategic assets. The debate is not simply about who builds the railway, it is about who benefits from it. For Tanzania, these projects represent a chance to transform its position in regional trade. They could lower transportation costs, create industrial opportunities, generate jobs, and increase the country's influence across East and Central Africa. But the larger story goes far beyond Tanzania. Because in the 21st century, power is not only measured by armies or alliances, it is measured by who controls the roads, ports, railways, and supply chains that connect the world's most valuable resources to global markets. And with its latest move in Tanzania, China didn't just build another railway. It laid down the tracks for the trade routes of tomorrow.